Right now you're listening to Otherwise here on SAFM. Well, next up, a Feminist Dialogue. It was hosted by Agenda, which is in itself a feminist journal. They're based in Durban. And it was held just last week, the second Feminist Dialogue, in fact, that they've had. And the aim, once again, is to bring together a whole group of women, a variety of women's organisations, in fact, and the purpose being to share their interests, their areas of concern, and look at collective ways in which they can address them. Well, we have three of the delegates with us on the show. We're going to be talking in a minute to Zanele Ludidi. She's chair of the KZN Portfolio Committee on Health, also a member of the KZN Provincial Legislature Women's Multi-Party Caucus, as well as Sizani Ngubani. She's director of the KZN Rural Women's Movement. But let's get a little bit of a grip on what the whole dialogue was all about. And we have with us first Lou Hayson. She's managing editor of Agenda, the journal. Hi there, Lou Hayson.
Hi, hello Nancy.
Nice to have you with us. Lou, would you like to explain to us, firstly, for those who don't know Agenda, the feminist journal, just give us a sort of a thumbnail sketch of what you're all about, and then why the Feminist Dialogue?
Okay. Agenda is really quite an old organisation. At that stage, it's in its 25th year. And it was started in 1987, by a group of concerned activists at a time when women didn't have the vote. And their concern really was how would women actually critique and input and ensure that, organisation was informed by research. And they started the journal really working around, tables late at night. And one of the things that they really felt was very important, that has guided the journal, is that, it's the idea that research without being informed on what is happening to women on the ground wasn't actually going to be very helpful. And vice versa, that actually organization needed also to be informed by research by a woman.
Research into what?
Well, Agenda publishes feminist writing, and I think research is really everything that we look at in the social, political, and economic context of our lives are actually gendered. If you're looking at it from a gender perspective, there is a dimension which can be read as gendered, and often that perspective is not understood. Laws are drafted as if men are the only people it affects, and in fact they're often quite complicated gender consequences, impacts for women which are not recognized, particularly for poor women. I'm talking about water and sanitation, I'm talking about health issues. Women's anatomies were always left out. Medical research has always often treated men as the kind of prototype. So the research really, I think that Agenda is now, in fact, just gone to press with its 90th issue, has looked at many, many different facets of South African society under themed, research, and people have contributed the research that they have done. And because we're a peer-reviewed journal with a kind of an activist leaning, in the direction, we are regarded as something slightly different from a typical academic journal, but we certainly fit there because we take research and knowledge production by women enormously seriously.
Maybe this is something we should come back to, but you're in your 25th year, your 90th edition of the journal itself, and yet we find ourselves in a not dissimilar situation, and we have a gender commission, or the Gender Commission for Equality. There's a lot of activity around equalising things, and yet we're not moving forward terribly fast. Do you feel that?
Yes, look, I think that we did a concept note around the feminist dialogues, and one of the reasons that Agenda wanted the feminist dialogues is that, in a sense, the idea of women actually getting together to actually talk. Women's organizations, women's structures, women's small NGOs, women as community-based. There are many, many, many in South Africa. Not all of them are directly going to say, look, we're feminists, but there's certainly quite a few who would. And I think that's different from 20 years ago. There was a very strong emphasis on race and class, and that feminism wasn't something that African theorists had taken up and been able to publish around. And actually, in the last 15 years, African feminism has really put itself on the map. The issues around where we're going and, where is the women's equal rights agenda, where is oppression really affecting people in which quarters and which sectors, and how do women actually themselves talk about and negotiate and deal with these issues. So the first feminist dialogue looked at something very broad. It said, are we safe in our cities? Women live in the cities, they work in the cities, but does the city listen? How do we use our vote? How do we use the political power that we actually do have to ask these questions? And actually, to move to this particular dialogue, I think that the idea was that, look, we need to actually hear and discuss amongst ourselves. And so inviting women's organizations to the dialogue was agreed on.
Okay.
By Gender Board and the editorial committee. And we had quite a range of different groups.
And what was the theme? If the first one was, are we safe in our cities, what was the theme for this one?
Well, really, it was just actually come and learn. Let's share, let's open a window where we are able actually to listen to one another around actually the work that women are doing, their priorities, and the kinds of challenges they're confronting in the particular sectors they're working. So, for example, Notile Mankanyana from the Domestic Violence Assistance Program started off the program. She isn't on the program because she couldn't get through to us to say yes, she's coming. But her particular description of the work she was doing was really around providing the critical services which the state is not, and SAPS and the courts are not providing to women who are gender violence victims. And she described how this work is really very, very important for women to actually find the courage to actually go to the district surgeons, to actually go to court. They were working in rural areas, and they're working in townships, and they're working in hospitals. And, her work took on a very important light, because she said that what they also are doing at the community level is women who come through the process are also involved in learning and building solidarity and awareness amongst women at the community level to challenge gender violence. In other words, at the community level to question attitudes which say, gender violence is acceptable.
So it's a slow road, but little by little, women are starting to talk more, get themselves together and put something out there. I want to come back to the outcomes in just a minute, Lou, but we have on the line Zanele Ludidi. She's chair of the KZN Portfolio Committee on Health, but also member of the KZN Provincial Legislature Women's Multi-Party Caucus. Ms. Ludidi, are you there?
I am there.
Thank you very much.
But just one correction. I'm not the chair of the Women's Caucus, but I was standing in for the chair.
Okay. Nonetheless, in your personal and private capacity, what did you derive from the Feminist Dialogue?
It's just that women need to come together and fight whatever challenges that they have. Because, we had different angles. We had the law, we had the domestic violence, and some other networks, but we did not know how to help each other, and even getting into the legislature with the law. But when we were there, we sat together and we had one voice. The only thing and the major thing that came out is that we should come together and fight challenges against women.
The challenges that you're confronted with, or you and your departments are confronted with, are what?
Challenges, for instance, like equality in the eyes of the laws as the Constitution is putting it, but it's not happening. For instance, as Lou was saying about the gender violence NGO, they go to South African Police Services, they then joy and where to go from there. When they come to the Women's Caucus, as the Women's Caucus, we are in Parliament so that we empower ourselves, so that we are able to talk about our challenges as women freely, not being afraid of being undermined by men, attacked by men. Therefore, they talk on their NGOs' experiences, and then we decided as legislators to invite them to the legislature and call all the stakeholders, justice, DSD, because we have the authority.
It seems like there's a lot of talking, a lot of sharing, a lot of offloading of problems. But in terms of moving forward and taking some sort of action, what did you get out of the dialogue?
For instance, if we call justice, we explain our problems and things, and for the ruling party in the legislature, the ANC, we have a policy conference in June. Some of the things that might come during that sitting might be eye-opening for us to take these issues to the policy conferences, for laws to be made, for laws to be changed, so that everybody is happy.
So you're confident that something more will have come out of this dialogue that will take the cause forward?
Of course. I was very impressed, and I didn't know myself. Like some of the NGOs didn't know that they can talk to us. Those lines of communication was not clear. And I didn't know that I'll benefit this much, that while doing this less. For instance, one of the participants suggested that we make a law forcing other political parties to have a quota of women in their structures like the ANC is doing. I was excited about that.
A quota system, in other words?
A quota system, yes.
Do you think that's the way to go?
Oh, yes, because we even made an example that there is a political, if we say political parties should do, we have no jurisdiction in their policies and things. We will always say, and they don't do. But if we legalize it, they are forced. For instance, here in KZN, we all know that there is a political party that was divided because they did not want to be ruled by a woman. So they would never have it on their agenda to empower women, not unless you force them with the law.
Are you referring to the IFP?
Oh, I didn't say that.
Okay. Just putting two and two together there. So it seems like you were pleased with the outcomes. And, I'll ask Lou later on if there's going to be another one, a follow-up. But Zanele Ludidi, thank you so much for joining us. And I'm glad that for you it was a success. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Take care. Sizani, next, that was Zanele Ludidi. She is from KZN there. But just before I take our next guest, Sizani Ngubane, who's director of the KZN Rural Women's Movement. Lou, I just want to come back to you. Big focus on what's going on in the KwaZulu-Natal there. Is this something that is pertinent to women across the country, or is it very much a KZN focus?
I think it's because we're based in KwaZulu-Natal. We also limited by budget. And I think that in a sense that what we're saying is it's not as if, we really have the capacity as a journal to rally people and say, come on, let's form a really strong women's movement on the ground and go and change things. I think it's far more complicated than that. And I think that it really requires a lot of strategizing by a woman. That you start where you are. And, if we had a big enough budget, we would have perhaps been able to extend the invitations to a much bigger group.
How many women were there at the dialogue?
Well, there were 30 of us.
30, and how many organizations were represented?
We had, I think, 8.
Okay.
1, 2, 3.
Okay, well, that will do for the time being. Let's talk to it.
We had 7 groups.
Okay.
We had the SMIs. We had social movements to come and talk. And, the issue was there is how are women being represented in social movements. and as Suzanne will say, look, the rural women's movement is entirely a women's movement, and they make all their decisions, and they've got some very, very particular issues. And I think that it's really important. Men meet an awful lot, and I think they've got their groups. But if you're organising women and you don't know what other women are doing, and you don't have a chance to actually sit around the table and share and actually, in a sense, extend networks to say, look, we've got a crisis here.
Well, yes.
And how we support one another is also in question.
Well, let's find out exactly what some of the issues that the KwaZulu-Natal Rural Women's Movement do have, because we have Director Sizani Ngubane with us. Ms. Ngubane, thank you very much for your time.
Thank you so much.
Well, it's a pleasure, because I think rural women in particular are said to be the voiceless. So it would be very interesting to hear it would have been nice to be a fly on the wall at the dialogue. But some of the challenges, some of the issues that you presented there were what?
It was very great to be part of the dialogue, because the dialogue created a space for RWM to learn from other organizations. And as the rural women, in most situations, we are very isolated. So dialogues like that are very useful for us. And the main issue for the Rural Women's Movement, which is a land rights organization, is the issue of women's independent land rights. We don't have independent land rights in KwaZulu-Natal. Our rights are still attached to our male relatives. Say, for instance, if I go to a traditional leader and ask to be allocated land, I will be asked to be represented by a male person, by a male relative, which is, as RWM, we think it's unconstitutional.
And yet it persists. What's being done about it? What as a movement, are you able to do about it?
As a movement, we trying to familiarize ourselves with the sections in the constitutions, especially those sections that talk about gender issues, because we see this as a gender issue, because we are discriminated against on the basis of our being women.
Has the Traditional Information Bill had any bearing on this?
It has a lot.
Positively or negatively?
Negatively. It allows our traditional leaders to impose levies on our communities. Right now, within RWM, the issue of levies is a very big issue. The majority of members of RWM are surviving on social grants. And out of those social grants, they have to have levies for our traditional leaders. I will make an example of a situation where a young woman is pregnant. At Utugela district, one of the chiefs there expects the parents of the young man who made the young woman pregnant to pay inkomo, to pay a cow, or if they don't have a cow, they need to pay 1,000 rand. And if you look at the fact that the majority of people in the rural areas are surviving on social grants, 1,000 rand to be given to a chief who gets a salary is a lot of money. In some areas like Sisonke, there's a chief who is asking for levies, demanding levies from communities to pay for the university education of his son. And they even ask communities to contribute into their purchase for their own cars. We think that the traditional courts bill should look into it and make sure that our traditional leaders are not allowed to impose levies on communities.
So you would like legislation changed on that score.
Yes.
What, if anything, did you get from the dialogue, which gave you ideas about how you could put together your concerns and your complaints?
Like Ludi's Women's Caucus, we didn't know about the caucus, and we did not know that we could open a conversation with them about these issues.
So that's been a positive thing.
It has been a positive thing, yes.
How many from the RWM? How many of you were there? Because there will be. I mean, you yourself are the directors, but I would imagine that there are a huge amount of women who you will have to go and report back to.
Yeah.
How do you do that? How do you keep the network going?
We are working through structures at community level. We have community structures, district structures, and a provincial structure. So we work through those structures, and it's those structures that take all the messages, the reports to the communities, to the broader membership.
I would imagine that the KwaZulu-Natal Rural Women's Movement would have many challenges in common with rural women countrywide. Do you have any sort of networking system with other women elsewhere in the country?
Yeah, we are part of a land sector at national level, and we are also working with some organization at an international level.
It sounds like it's really something of a battle, Sizani.
It is.
Yes.
It is, because our rights as women are kind of not recognized.
You are going to take it forward. I mean, physically, what are you going to do now? What's your next movement?
Our next movement, we are currently busy on a campaign where we are raising awareness about the traditional courts bill, and when the government, the provincial government is going to have their public education, and when they are going to have their public hearings.
If anybody would like to be in touch with the Rural Women's Movement, maybe they would like to add their voice, maybe they've got some suggestions, how may they do that? Do you yourself have a website or an email address?
We do have a website, and we do have an email address and a telephone number. Can I give it to you?
If you just give me the website, that will probably...
Okay.
Yep.
The website is www.rwmsa.org.
Super.
Yes.
Lovely. Well, Sizani Ngubane, thank you very much, and very best of luck. And it sounds like it's a big struggle, but
it is.
Very best of luck with moving it forward, and hopefully we'll speak again. Thank you for your time.
I thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for having us.
Director of KZN Rural Women's Movement, Sizani Ngubane there. Well, if you would like to find out a little bit more about the movement, and as I say, I'm sure their issues are echoed right across the country, www.rwmsa.org, rwmsa.org. You're listening to Otherwise, we're talking about a feminist dialogue. And here on Otherwise, we're talking about a feminist dialogue which was hosted by Agenda. It's a feminist journal based in Durban. And we have on the line managing editor of the publication, Lou Hayson. So, Lou, it certainly sounds like the KZN Rural Women's Movement were happy in as much as they had their voices heard, and they've discovered other people who will support them. The outcomes of all that was discussed last week, will it appear finally in an issue of agenda, and will it appear in such a way that it will be useful to all women?
We had a tweet out during the Feminist Dialogue, and we also did it the first time. So that the thing to note is that whilst we were speaking and the issues were being raised by the different speakers, because we also had the social movements in Durban and the Progressive Women's Movement, and an organisation, Women's Legal Network, which talked about legal and litigative, strategies. So there was an awful lot coming up. When I say all women, I think that we know as Agenda that not all women are going to read Agenda. And how we reach women is also quite strategic, but we certainly hope that, by documenting what we've done and what women has actually shared in terms of their priorities, in terms of the kinds of concerns that they have, we've noticed that there's lack of resources, there's resistance by traditional authority, there are obstructions, there's backlash by officials.
So what will you?
Are looking to go to systems, and the systems aren't there.
So what will you do with this information? Will you take it to the Commission on Gender Equality, or how will you move it forward?
We did it the last one because we invited a speaker from the city who didn't turn up. And there were some actually quite pressing questions that were raised from the floor of that particular dialogue regarding the rights of a particular group of women who are not feeling particularly safe in the city at all. They're poor women and they work enormously hard. So there is a process that came out of that, where we actually asked the CGE to ask for some answers to the questions raised. I think at this fund, it's being suggested that the Domestic Violence Assistance Program approach the multi-party Women's Caucus in the legislature to request more support and more understanding of the problems that women actually face, and to try to address these problems, because in a sense it's a shortfall.
Lou, I'm afraid we're going to have to leave it there, but thank you very much for your time, and I suspect if anybody would like to know more, probably the place to look is www.agenda.org.za.
Obviously there will be an article.
Thank you. Agenda.org.za. That was Managing Editor. Well, that's it for Otherwise today. Derek Fordyce, Hazel Makuzeni, thank you very much. Coming up next, it's Afternoon Talk with Ashraf Garda.